Silence filled the hall as the king, seated upon his throne, inquired of the two young men if they were both willing to choose Hinael as their wife. Standing before us were the princess's suitors, Count Phil and Prince Viant, who, at the ball that marked the beginning of this story, captured the hearts of countless women. Count Phil, elegant in his demeanor, was the most gentle and refined among them, deeply captivated by the princess and profoundly in love with her. Prince Viant's gaze held countless secrets. He couldn't understand why. If he preferred Hinael, he couldn't choose her. The princess had to choose between the two young men. Everyone in the castle was curious about the consequences of this contest for her attention. The court ladies, eager to know who she would choose, whispered amongst themselves, their voices rising above the music, heightening the anticipation. Count Phil, dubbed the Love Count by the ladies and their gossip, was the dream lover of every girl, a stark contrast to Prince Viant. Prince Viant, cold and ruthless, was promised one of 5 princesses as a wife due to his kingdom's losses. We see Princess Hinael awaiting her father's decision, an answer that would determine her future and that of the entire kingdom. But the princess already knew the answer. History was repeating itself. She was trapped in a time loop. So, this time, whom would she choose? The story unfolds in the cold. Princess Hinael, seated in a carriage, felt unwell, carrying Count Phil's long-awaited child. Her devoted maid, Da, though plain in appearance, was the princess's best friend, always comforting Hinael with warm words. Hinael reassured Da that she was fine, thinking with a weary smile of the child who would become a symbol of hope. Da couldn't understand why she and the princess were being sent to such a remote place, especially with a blizzard raging and the princess in such a delicate condition. Da loathed Hinael's fiancé, Count Phil, angered by his flippancy, which she perceived as a threat. Hinael, carrying his child, was willing to forgive the Count's betrayal, hoping the child's birth would change him, make him a different man. Suddenly, a man stopped the carriage and ordered them out. His voice, laced with menace, foreshadowed ill fortune. The maid couldn't understand why they had to get out in the raging blizzard, the biting wind filling them with dread. The princess had to step out into the biting wind, as something seemed to be wrong with the carriage. She resolved to be brave, to not succumb to panic. Suddenly, surrounded by men, separated from her maid, anxiety gripped her. She realized she had fallen into danger. Hinael struggled against the men, but they showed no regard for the child she carried. Her heart pounded with terror as she cried out for help. The Count appeared, the air thick with tension. He surveyed the scene with indifference, and naive Hinael felt a surge of relief at his arrival. Hinael, her voice trembling, asked the Count why he was there, a mixture of excitement and hope, seeking solace in his presence. But the Count gripped her shoulders tightly, pulling her close. His face was grim, devoid of warmth. The Count coldly stated that Hinael was not the wife he wanted. He wanted Isabella. This girl meant nothing to him. The Count saw no other option but to eliminate his wife and unborn child. His cruelty prevailed as he murdered them. The ground beneath their feet was fragile as thin ice, threatening to shatter with the slightest movement, loose stones slipping away. The Count pushed the poor girl off the cliff. Time seemed to stand still as the life of the protagonist and her unborn child ended. Hinael, shocked by the betrayal, the wind whistling in her ears, her heart pounding, knew she could never forgive him. The Count's triumphant smile, full of smug, cruel confidence, flashed before Hinael's eyes. Waking up, Hinael realized she wasn't pregnant, but she also understood that her dreams of a future with her beloved were shattered. Da, who woke her, believed the princess's nightmare was caused by outsiders, while the princess realized she was reliving her life. Prince Viant, the cold and ruthless conqueror, would return to the kingdom to claim her as his reward. Everyone in the palace pitted the princess for having to marry the heartless Prince Viant, a man incapable of love. Her fate seemed sealed. Because of the shift in time, the princess knew Viant would win the struggle for the throne. His cruelty and ambition would destroy everything. The princess also knew that Viant's marriage to her was a gift of friendship between the two kingdoms, a political sacrifice. Hinael was destined to die at the hands of her husband, her child perishing with her, the kingdom's future bleak. Count Phil rejoiced at his wife's death, seeing it as a victory and a release from his ambitions. He craved power, and she understood that her husband didn't need her at all. Now pregnant, she decided to take revenge on the Count by reliving and correcting this story. She ordered her loyal maid, DEA, to bring out all the dresses and jewels from the wardrobe, marking the beginning of her vengeance for her child and her own death. The princess explained to DEA that she wanted to welcome the distinguished guest, Prince Viant, with the grandest traditions of the kingdom, as befitting a king's daughter. DEA was curious why the princess wanted to visit Viant's homeland and puzzled by her sudden interest in another man. DEA believed the king wished for his daughter to have a love match, despite having raped the princess's mother and holding no love for his daughter. The princess understood that she was ultimately destined to marry Count Phil, meaning both she and her child would be killed. Hinael wanted to dress more daringly, to attract the attention of everyone present and demonstrate her independence. Determined to change her fate, save her child, and avenge herself against the despicable Count, the princess had lunch with her mother. They ate cake in a peaceful and serene atmosphere. Lost in vengeful thoughts, the princess only snapped out of her dark reverie when her mother called her. Her mother asked Hinael to bring her some strawberry cake and continued to recount her past. Hinael's mother, originally a servant, became the king's concubine after being raped by him, holding only the title of queen. This mother told the princess that she was soon to be engaged to Count Phil, the main villain and traitor. The princess's mother considered the marriage to the Count fortunate, believing he would bring glory to the family, and that the princess was a lucky woman. The princess had once thought of marrying the Count too, until she witnessed him kill her, back when she was a naive fool. However, the Count ruthlessly murdered her and her newborn child, throwing them off a cold cliff, shattering her dreams completely. Hinael would never forgive the Count for the murder of herself and her child, so she ignored her mother's words and began to plot her revenge against Phil. The king's daughter contemplated how to use Prince Viant to take revenge on the Count and involve him in this game, while still maintaining her own innocence. Today was her mother's birthday, and the princess remembered something happening on this day. Prince Viant of the neighboring kingdom brutally stabbed a man that night. The scene shifted to the entrance of the prince's chambers, where the castle guards were informed of a thief in the castle. The princess told the guards that a belonging of the visiting Viant had gone missing, leading to suspicion of theft falling upon the local guards. She said the embroidery with the goddess pattern had disappeared, her voice laced with panic, and it must be found immediately. Because of the time loop, she knew the guard before her was the thief, so she boldly accused him of stealing the embroidery. It seemed the guard had indeed stolen it, and death awaited him, as such a crime would never be forgiven. Fearing execution, the guard handed over the embroidery, his heart torn between guilt and relief, realizing everything had changed. He was grateful the princess hadn't had him executed and understood he must now dedicate himself to proving his loyalty to the royal family. He left the princess, fading into the shadows, filled with remorse and unease. The king's daughter finally calmed down, for she had been afraid, and when the fear subsided, hope for revenge against the Count ignited within her. The princess saw the embroidery for the first time, her eyes sparkling with admiration as she examined the beautiful pattern. She felt it must be very expensive, for such lovingly woven beauty, in her eyes, was a priceless symbol of happiness. Viant never parted with this embroidery, as it was a relic of his deceased mother, carrying more than just memories. The princess believed this embroidery could help her speak with the prince and was the key to uncovering some dark secret. Suddenly, someone tried to kill Hinael. A chill ran down her spine as she realized she had to act. The mysterious young man held a sword to her throat, saying he had intended to kill the thief on the spot. He was displeased that the princess had saved the thief, an act he saw not only as a threat to her reputation, but also as a betrayal. The mysterious young man was Viant himself, the second suitor for the kingdom's princess, as he had been promised he could marry one of the princesses. The princess wondered how the young man had entered, as the door was locked and the windows closed. She couldn't explain his presence. Upon seeing her necklace, the young man's expression changed. He asked Hinael why she was here, wearing only her undergarments, and tried to take the necklace. He lunged towards her, yearning for the thing that could change the girl's fate and forever unveil the Dark Prince's secrets. Like a wild beast, filled with determination and desire, he was completely oblivious to his surroundings, focused solely on capturing his prey. Russ lunged at Princess Hinael, his heart pounding with excitement. Viant and Hinael now lay on the floor, breathing heavily, their eyes filled with emotion as the tension between them escalated. Hinael blushed, a shy flush creeping up her cheeks as she realized the prince's proximity. The prince's face and eyes, altered by magic, held a newfound power, capable of changing the fate of the entire kingdom. He picked up the magical embroidery, a warm energy flowing into his hands, filling him with strength and confidence, the belief that he could fix everything. Magic swirled around the prince, while Hinael, clad only in her undergarments, sat on the floor, drawing herself into a tighter bundle. The young man clutched the embroidery to his chest, feeling its magic begin to intertwine with his soul, filling him with resolve. Viant picked up his fallen sword, its blade seeming to whisper of forgotten battles and the destiny he must change. Princess Hinael pleaded with Viant to listen, her voice trembling with emotion, her eyes shining with a glimmer of hope, each word a desperate plea. Count Phil questioned Hinael about the guard and sheathed his sword, realizing this was not the time for violence, but for understanding. The princess replied that she feared the thief would be killed and worried about conflict between their nations, as violence only brought destruction and war. The prince scoffed at her concerns, dismissing them as foolish, believing that in this world, only the strong survived and everything else was irrelevant. The young man sharply questioned her, asking why, if she truly cared for her country, she hadn't stopped the invasion. He was perplexed by her weakness. Russ could still smell the blood of his countrymen, hear the sounds of battle, the horrific scent clinging to him, a constant reminder of the fallen. Hinael, her thoughts in turmoil, didn't know how to respond, feeling only fear and helplessness. She sadly admitted that the war between their two nations was her country's fault. The prince expressed his disdain for the princess's origins. She was the product of the king's violation of servant girl. Hinael confirmed that she was the youngest of the king's 5 daughters, promised as a gift to Russ. In the past, the prince had no interest in women. He was consumed by war and always deliberately avoided them. He needed a woman to bear him an heir, but inwardly doubted he would find someone willing to share such an important mission with him. The princess offered herself as the future king's wife, understanding it was more than just a duty to her country. She pleaded with the prince to choose her, promising unconditional obedience, loyalty, and love. Viant pondered the tempting offer, one that could drastically alter the course of his life. He flashed a smile, his white teeth gleaming, clearly intrigued by the proposition, but his true thoughts remained hidden. Russ recalled his father's fury when offered a daughter as a concubine and the king's perception of it as a family disgrace. He lit a candlestick and walked towards the girl, the flickering light illuminating his face. The prince was intrigued, for the prize of this war was special to him, not a kingdom or treasures, but a princess willing to forsake account. Hinael pleaded with him to take her as his wife. Clad only in her undergarments, she was alone in the room with the young man, no one else present. Hinael suddenly realized her chemise revealed everything, and as her body was inadvertently exposed to the surprised Prince Viant, Russ couldn't understand why she shyly covered herself under his gaze, as there was nothing wrong with her body. Viant, with a playful tone, asked Hinael how she intended to please him, now that they were alone. Hinael was determined to change her fate, to break free from the past, for revenge against the Count, and to save her unborn child. For her child, Hinael was willing to do anything for the prince, even make great sacrifices and bold decisions. The king's daughter slowly undressed, feeling the prince's gaze, this moment only a prelude to greater events. Viant, caught off guard, his heart quickening with surprise, was visibly flustered by Hinael's actions. Divested of her clothing, she stood before him, beautiful and mysterious, like a woman from the wildest fantasies of the kingdom's men. The crown princess stood naked in the center of the room, feeling shy and uneasy, for she did not love the prince. Viant realized his earlier jest had gone too far, hurting her feelings, and now he had to apologize. Hinael asked the prince if he was moved, her voice trembling with emotion, hoping her words had reached his heart. A tense silence hung between them, as if everyone was waiting for someone to break the silence. Viant laughed, his laughter melodic and warm, filled the room, and for a moment, all worries and doubts seemed to disappear. The princess had piqued his curiosity. The more he looked at her, the more he felt that behind her enigmatic smile lay deep thoughts. Hine considered her next move, analyzing all possible options, searching for a solution that would secure her future. A black cloak was thrown to her to cover herself. Wrapped in the soft fabric, she felt warmth and safety. Viant ordered her to get dressed, and she slowly rose from her knees and began to put on the simple yet elegant clothes the prince had offered. Russ asked the princess why she had gone to such lengths, his voice laced with concern and confusion. Hine, summoning her courage, took a deep breath to steady her trembling knees and finally looked directly into the prince's eyes with determination. The king's daughter spoke of her fiancé and her father's decision. She described her inability to accept the arranged marriage, confessing her yearning for love. She was determined not to marry the count, and despite the anger and disappointment it would cause, she would fight for her own happiness. Vine understood he had no choice. Despite his own desire for freedom and independence, he was compelled to agree to the princess's request. Hine believed she had been persuasive and would become the prince's wife, her words filled with heartfelt hope. Viant warned her of the rumors surrounding him. Despite his efforts to remain calm, his voice held a note of apprehension. Hine waited for the prince's next move, hoping he would display the courage and resolve to prove his feelings. The prince told her he was more like a beast due to his cruelty. He feared this dark side would push her away. He warned her that he might lose control, that the demons within him might take over, and that would be disastrous. The young man believed bloodshed suited him better than a peaceful life, his inner passion for war difficult to contain. Hine didn't care what others said about the prince. She knew that beneath his cold mask lay a complex soul, full of passion. She made only one request of the prince, believing it was her chance to be herself, without pretense or disguise, and perhaps a chance to save herself. The prince, his heart quickening, wondered what request lay behind her words. The princess's condition was to bear the prince a child, but she also hoped it would be the beginning of a deep bond between them. Hine understood the prince would not fall in love with her, his heart already belonging to another. She had to accept this reality, but she asked the prince to protect her future child, hoping that even without love between them, he would be a source of support and reliance. A maid knocked, having forgotten to close the window, explaining that a strong gust of wind had blown dust and leaves throughout the palace. The prince and Hine worried about being discovered together, fearing their clandestine meeting could anger the royal family and ruin everything. He invited the princess to the garden tomorrow to enjoy a moment of privacy beneath the blossoming trees. He would give her his answer at their meeting tomorrow, when he had gathered his courage and understood that their feelings were worth risking everything for. Russ leaped over the balcony, landing nimbly on the soft grass of the garden below, his heart pounding with adrenaline and excitement. Hine was terrified. They were on the second floor, and she thought he would fall to his death. But the prince didn't fall. Instead, he landed lightly on the grass like a seasoned acrobat. Rising and looking around, the young man smiled farewell to her, his heart still racing with adrenaline. He felt hope. He left, feeling his spirit grow lighter and freer with each step, as if he had shed a heavy burden. The princess was astonished, her heart beating faster, hope ignited within her. Perhaps, together, they could change everything. Midday at the castle. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the walls in vibrant hues and creating a unique atmosphere. D.A. asked her mistress if she was expecting guests, noting the unusual bustle in the castle, with servants preparing for something. The princess looked elegant today, her eyes sparkling with joy and excitement, hinting at an important event about to unfold. D.A. noticed her mistress was injured, thin scratches marring her delicate skin, sending a wave of concern through her. Hine worried whether the prince would accept her proposal, her heart already filled with hopes and dreams of a shared future. She wondered if she looked different. Perhaps the prince would notice her. Visions of brightly colored dresses flashed through her mind. Suddenly, Viant's father's official wife approached with friends from the fifth courtyard, intending only to humiliate her with cruel words. The queen, unaware of Hine's presence, felt a surge of anxiety upon seeing the familiar figure. Hine greeted Viant's mother and the other ladies, masking her excitement with a polite smile and curtsy to the queen. The queen's friends gossiped amongst themselves, whispering and exchanging glances filled with envy and curiosity. Hain's mother, forced into marriage by the king, lived a life of quiet shame, avoiding the prying eyes and whispers of the court. Just then, Count Evan, Russ's aide, appeared with a determined expression, drawing everyone's attention. He introduced himself to Hain and Dee, mentioning he had heard about her meeting with the prince, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. Evan carefully escorted Hain to his master, leading her through the castle gardens adorned with tapestries and flowers. Viant's mother frowned, disapproving of her son's romantic pursuits when he should be focused on matters of state. Russ, awaiting Hain, tried to steady his trembling hands, knowing this moment held the key to more than just his own fate. Hain greeted him with a smile, all her worries momentarily fading as a flicker of hope for the future ignited within her. Russ returned Hain's cloak, apologizing for the previous day's events, his voice slightly trembling as he explained he meant no offense, while feigning indifference and claiming not to even want to know her name, nor forgive her for yesterday's actions. He longed to see her again. He had his own conditions, unwilling to be vulnerable without assurances of her sincerity and resolve. A question gnawed at him, demanding an answer. Could she accept him as he was? Russ inquired about Hain's fiancée, suspecting her heart might already belong to another, leaving him as merely a pawn. Viant believed Hain would be better off with the Count, who possessed everything she supposedly desired, status and influence. Hain couldn't explain her actions. Russ wouldn't believe her story of a repeating timeline. She needed to save her child. She remembered how cruelly Count Phil had treated her, pushing her off a cliff, killing her and their child. It was a fate she was determined to avoid. Hain desired to be Russ's wife, a worthy partner, but to achieve this, she had to conquer her fears and doubts. Russ warned her that she would only receive a title, as he had no interest in women, but having a child presented a novel experience. The prince's condition was that he wouldn't even touch Hain. Although his resolve wavered internally, he maintained a cold facade. His other condition was that if Hain bore him a child, he would not grant the child any power, leaving Hain with a difficult decision. For the sake of her future family, Hain agreed, but a growing unease gnawed at her. She understood this sacrifice might cost her more than just personal happiness. The prince would propose at tomorrow's ball, thrusting her into the political spotlight amidst the glittering chandeliers and whispers of envious guests. Russ bid Hain a curt farewell, his voice laced with a forced formality, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of joy. This goodbye was not forever. D.A., anxiously awaiting her mistress, worried about what had transpired between them. She inquired about the outcome of the conversation, hoping for news that would change everything, desperate to know if their gamble had paid off. Hain recounted everything to her loyal maid, sharing her experiences and fears, a hint of relief in her voice. DEA worried about Count Phil's reaction, knowing his opinion held weight with Hain and that he would undoubtedly be displeased. Hain felt apprehensive about the impending wedding, realizing it would test her own emotional fortitude. DEA encouraged Hain, assuring her they would overcome any obstacles and that this day marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Inspired by the prospect of making Hain beautiful, DEA resolved to create an unforgettable, magical wedding. The beautiful castle bustled with preparations for the ball, creating a dreamlike atmosphere, a prelude to a memorable night in Hain's life. The maid borrowed jewels from Hain's mother, hoping to enhance the princess's radiance at the ball. She gently brushed Hain's hair, careful not to cause any discomfort. Hain was stunned by her mother's gift, recognizing it as more than just jewels, but a symbol of family tradition and love. The ball commenced, guests in magnificent attire filling the hall, anticipating a night of dancing and merriment. Hain, resplendent in her new gown, made her entrance, nervously surveying the room. A woman in a fashionable yellow dress, a devilish smile playing on her lips, approached. She was the king's daughter, Cello, known for her gossiping. She had Hain's dress. Hain greeted her, and Cello, noticing Hain's new look, complimented her on how fashionable she appeared in the new dress. Cello's friends asked if she was worried about being rejected, adding that Hain was too important to miss this opportunity. Despite the magnificent gown and the attention of everyone around her, the young girls managed to dampen Hain's spirits. After they left, a figure approached her from behind, blocking the light of the chandelier, and whispered in her ear, a hand resting on her shoulder. Count Phil appeared with a sinister smile, ready to enact his wicked plan to seduce the princess. Count Phil noticed the scratches hidden beneath the lace gloves on Haine's hand. He was filled with questions about his bride-to-be. He grasped her hand, squeezing it tightly enough to cause pain. Haine disliked his touch and prepared to respond. He asked her how she got the wounds, tormented by suspicions about his fiancée's fidelity and her whereabouts the previous night. Haine boldly lied to Count Phil, hoping he wouldn't discover what had truly transpired in Prince Rustavine's chambers. The Count was displeased that his plans were once again disrupted by unforeseen circumstances, and Haine was no longer easily fooled. Phil tried to kiss her wounds, feigning tenderness and comfort, hoping to hasten their healing. Haine abruptly withdrew her hand, determined not to let him control her life any longer. Count Phil told her, with feigned remorse, that she was embarrassing him in front of the guests. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Both became alert, exchanging puzzled glances. Prince Viant approached them with a friendly smile, his eyes full of curiosity about their conversation. He sought out Haine, hoping she could explain the country's traditions to him and ease his unease in the unfamiliar environment. Prince Viant suddenly noticed the wound on her arm, seeing the blood slowly seeping through the bandage. Feigning concern and pointedly speaking in front of Count Phil, he claimed responsibility for the injury, saying he couldn't keep her away from danger. With that, Prince Viant gently kissed Haine's hand, his lips lightly brushing her skin, sending a wave of warmth through her. Count Phil, consumed by jealousy, felt a surge of anger, his emotions barely contained. Prince Viant, his voice trembling with anger, openly interfered in their relationship, furious at Count Phil's actions. Count Phil called Prince Viant dull and accused him of lacking manners, disdainful of his inappropriate behavior towards Haine. Count Phil considered kissing a lady's hand an inappropriate gesture, an invasion of personal space, and an outdated ritual. The two began to argue, their voices rising, their emotions escalating, a conflict on the verge of eruption. Both adversaries were on edge, eyes blazing with fury, the air thick with tension that frightened everyone present. Their quarrel was interrupted by the arrival of the king, who entered the hall with an air of authority, silencing many of the court members in his presence. He had witnessed their conflict and stared sternly at the two men, demanding they cease their fighting immediately. The king wanted to understand what had happened and questioned both adversaries in turn, demanding an explanation for the conflict. Prince Viant asked the king for permission to propose to Haine, assuring him that his respect for her family made him a suitable candidate. Count Phil reported that the princess had promised to give her answer today, his voice trembling with excitement, his future hanging on her decision. Haine was displeased that Count Phil had already petitioned the king for her hand, believing it should be her own choice. The Count was confident in his manipulation, expecting to defeat Prince Viant and secure Haine's choice. But Prince Viant was resolute, determined to protect his feelings and not succumb to the Count's provocations and schemes. The king was surprised they couldn't decide between themselves, and the tension between Count Phil and Prince Viant unsettled him. This was the starting point of all stories, the choice of a husband. Haine realized this wasn't just a question about the future, but a test. The king didn't understand Prince Viant's rush to choose a bride, as he still had time to consider his feelings and relationships. The court members tried to understand the prince's choice, as he hadn't even met her sisters yet, their whispers growing more confused. The princess wondered if the prince had forgotten something important hidden behind his silence, something that might change their relationship. Prince Viant stated that Count Phil deserved an apology, as his actions had caused a misunderstanding and damaged their trust. He confessed that his father had ordered him to burn down the palace and take Haine's sisters hostage, but he had dared to disobey. But the prince restrained himself, unable to forgive the Count's mockery, which undermined his authority as a ruler. The king considered the quarrel an interstate conflict with potentially serious diplomatic consequences. It could even lead to war. Phil was dissatisfied with Haine's father's orders, finding them unfair and overly harsh. Under pressure from the king, Phil was forced to apologize to the prince, though deep down, he felt his emotions were unjustly disregarded. Viant declared that there was only one way to resolve the current situation, to dissolve the Count's status as Haine's fiancée. He suddenly announced his intention to marry Haine, proclaiming he would make her his wife, not the wife of that arrogant and obnoxious Count. Phil was practically ignited with rage, his inner fury erupting like a volcano. He couldn't forgive such a public humiliation. Hane told her father that she wasn't a prize to be passed between men, but an individual with her own dreams. The girl's mother decided to persuade the prince to abandon the idea, realizing his passion could have grave consequences for the family. But the prince insisted his decision stemmed from gratitude for the return of his beloved, and Hane rightfully deserved to be his wife. The king urged his daughter to be more responsible and consented to the marriage, reminding her not to forget her duty to the country. Hane agreed, inwardly elated by this victory. Understanding this step opened new possibilities for her. Phil was furious with his rival, burning with rage, recalling all the humiliations and provocations. Viant understood Phil's anger and sincerely sympathized with the princess, who almost married such a hypocrite. Viant decided to resolve the situation peacefully, understanding that conflict would only worsen matters, and suggested Phil seek a compromise. Hane understood he was offering the Count more than just words. His intentions were serious. Count Phil's objections didn't bother Prince Viant, confident in his righteousness and willing to defend his ideas. Noting Phil's short stature, the prince suggested the Count find another suitable partner, confident he would find someone. Among the many ladies present, Phil randomly pointed to the first person he encountered, relying on luck, intuition, and charm. Hane, assuming it was her, was filled with anxiety, dreading a repeat of the past, and being killed. Count Phil chose Russ's wife from the previous time loop as revenge for his engagement to Hane. Hane realized she had finally changed her fate, seeing how her bold decision brought a different course to the story. The crowned prince approached her, his gaze filled with determination and tenderness. In this moment, all her romantic dreams came true. The scene shifted to a garden, fragrant flowers and soft light, creating a dreamlike atmosphere, the air filled with romance. The prince told her he had fulfilled his promise and was now ready to fulfill her wishes, but she also had to keep her promise. The princess thanked him for his help, and the prince suddenly laid down on the bench beside her, complaining about the unfamiliar weather. In their country, Hane understood, in the princess's homeland, it was always winter, never hot, and she was afraid of what would happen next. Hane saw an affectionate couple, a man and a pregnant woman, and in their eyes, she saw genuine joy and hope. She remembered her unborn child, a sharp pang of pain in her heart. The memories grew heavier, and Hane cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, mingling with the autumn air, feeling utterly vulnerable. Viant, noticing her tears, couldn't remain indifferent and moved closer, trying to understand her inner turmoil. The girl lied to him about the reason for her tears. Viant wouldn't believe the time loop and her death with their child, so she only told him about her mother. She said the king didn't love her mother, despite granting her the title of queen after Hane's birth. The prince expressed his dislike for the bad rumors about the princess, then fell into thought, his expression as gloomy as usual. Hane felt she shouldn't have confided in the prince, and now worried his attitude would change. But Viant, surprisingly, didn't care about the princess's origins, believing a person's worth wasn't determined by such things. Viant felt no love for this foreign country, but he wanted to take the girl away, for she had become his light. He didn't intend to feign ignorance and love, but wanted everyone to believe in his sincerity. Hane was grateful for the prince's genuine concern for her, even for her mother's health, indifferent to the gossip. Mia, Russ's wife from the previous time loop, sincerely congratulated the king's daughter on her engagement, wholeheartedly wishing Hane happiness. It said that Count Phil's future wife, Mia, is younger than the princess and has a gentle nature. They could have been friends. Mia feels awkward because Hane's former fiancé chose her as his wife. She can't accept this relationship, seeing it as nothing more than a shadow play of politics. Hane is surprised to discover that Mia has always dreamed of marrying the Count, but their friendship deepens through mutual understanding. Hane hadn't even realized Mia had a secret crush on Count Phil, as Mia always cleverly concealed her feelings at court. She fears Mia will suffer the same fate as herself, worried that Count Phil will mercilessly kill her, just as he did Hane and her child. Suddenly, someone calls Hane's name. She turns and sees a familiar face, a surge of complex emotions rising within her. Count Phil suddenly wants to talk to her, which is not a good sign for Princess Hinael, the king's youngest daughter. Phil wants to win the princess back, but to do so, he must not only overcome the obstacles between them, but also rebuild trust. Phil is determined to have Hinael, believing she belongs to him, and is willing to do anything to prove his false love. Hinael is afraid, sensing unknown danger ahead, the shadows of the past still clinging to her. She fears the Count will pursue her, that he will repeat his past actions, killing her and her child, plunging the kingdom into chaos. Prince Viant doesn't understand why she's sweating. Looking at her pale face and trembling figure, he begins to worry about her condition. Hinael lies to Viant, saying she was looking for him, but her mind is preoccupied with other matters. She's afraid of the person standing behind her. Phil stalks Hinael in the shadows of the castle, his gaze anything but benevolent towards the poor girl. He's like a wolf. Russ notices Phil's gaze and understands its implications, realizing his stare is not accidental but hides something deeper. The ball begins, music filling the air, allowing everyone to forget their troubles and immerse themselves in the royal dance steps. Russ invites the king's daughter to dance, hopefully awaiting her response. Understanding this moment could be crucial to their relationship. Russ also suggests to the king that it would be a good idea for both couples to dance together, implying it would create a friendly, competitive atmosphere. Phil glares at him, but can do nothing, forced to abide by etiquette with a heavy heart and comply with the prince's wishes. The two couples dance gracefully, their movements harmonious, displaying a spirit of unity in the hall, eliciting cheers from the crowd. Viant pretends to be the princess's lover, skillfully playing his role to gain the trust of the royal family and the princess. Hinael understands this, watching Viant's performance. She begins to guess his true motives and decides to play along. The dance between the princess and the prince is merely a performance for the audience. Beneath the cheerful facade lies tension and intrigue. Phil doesn't believe in their affection, thinking it's just a fleeting fancy, and decides he must stop them. Phil won't let the princess go easily, as their relationship is not only about love, but also about politics, and the prince is an obstacle to everything he desires. Viant understands why the princess dislikes Phil, as his arrogance and self-assurance fill the space between them with negativity. He encourages Hinael, assuring her that she possesses all the qualities to overcome her difficulties. During the ball, the prince lifts Hinael from the floor, holding her close. Hinael is shy about the prince's actions. Cello and Phil disapprove of this behavior, believing the prince and princess are too close, too presumptuous. The prince's subsequent actions are even more provocative. He begins to openly challenge Phil, provoking him and inciting conflict. The young man's actions are bold, attracting everyone's attention. He makes no secret of his intentions, and the provocation becomes more dangerous. Viant deliberately kisses Hinael, making Phil jealous, displaying his confidence, and attracting everyone's gaze. Hinael hadn't expected this, her face instantly flushing red with surprise and shyness. However, the girl enjoys this game of lovers, and she begins to realize that Viant surpasses the Count in matters of romance. Jealous women are ready to tear her apart, whispering malicious gossip to each other, plotting to shake her confidence. Phil also sees the kiss, his heart racing as he realizes it's more than just a game between them. He's stunned, unable to believe what just happened. He's jealous that Viant/Russ has won Hinael's heart. The wedding ceremony takes place in the Temple of the Fire God, a place filled with magic and a sacred atmosphere, where melodic sounds echo through the air. Willow bark symbolizes the newlyweds, signifying their love as both flexible and strong, capable of overcoming any hardship. Intertwined, the willow bark represents a firm yet gentle symbol of their united love. Supporting each other is paramount. The bride sincerely believes that this time she will protect her future child, surrounding them with love and care and sacrificing everything for them. Her anxiety is palpable, as if constantly anticipating something significant and unsettling. She trembles easily, her expression tinged with melancholy. The prince asks why she is nervous. Blushing slightly, she replies that she is simply not accustomed to being the center of attention, especially his. The priest abruptly stops his lengthy sermon on the union of lovers and turns to Prince Russ. A dark energy emanates from the groom, a bad omen. The priest thinks this marriage could become terrifying for Hinael, but Viant is unafraid of the church's prejudice. He decides to follow his heart, trusting his strength strength and belief in true love. Russ suspects the priest might try something, knowing that beneath his calm facade lie many secrets. He is well aware that this world is not simple. For reasons unknown, Russ takes out a silver almena, used to conceal dark magic and obscure the view of others. The priest sprinkles holy water on Viant, chanting incantations to protect him from evil and magic, but it's as if the dark energy never existed, making the priest appear somewhat foolish. The groom just wants the ceremony to end quickly. This country's hospitality disgusts him, and he is seen as a Satan worshiper. In the evening, the prince lashes out at the old man, his voice sharp with anger, because he almost revealed to everyone that the prince is a sorcerer. Evan asks his master who he is angry with, sensing the tension in the room and the prince's fury. Evan notices the almond wound on the prince's finger, realizing this small injury could become a serious problem. Viant dismisses the blood on his finger as nothing, but seeing the worry on Evan's face, he suddenly feels uneasy. Viant says the clergy have noticed the worship of ghosts, and he fears these rumors will cause panic. Viant carries the almena with him, using it to absorb dark magic, hoping no one will detect his magical abilities. Evan asks if the prince should speak to the king before leaving, as the prince has been poisoned and must leave the country quickly. The question arises, what about the princess? Her fate now depends on maintaining the public's trust. The prince, taken ill, doesn't answer, his face pale, his head swimming. Meanwhile, Hinael announces her mother's departure, leaving an atmosphere of unease and anxiety. Her mother knows this is the last time she will see her daughter. Bitterness fills her heart as she embraces Hinael. Hinael wants to stay with her mother a little longer, try to memorize her smile, her voice, the warmth of her embrace. Her mother gives Hinael a silent gift, a carefully preserved old box containing tokens symbolizing love and marriage. Hinael remembers her mother giving her this gift when she married Count Phil, hoping for a happy and fulfilling marriage. The love potion, brewed according to an ancient recipe, promised to awaken the deepest affections and ensure a smooth childbirth. After the wedding, Zeta gradually lost interest in the princess, so she used the potion, hoping to rekindle his attention and passion. Still, she bids her mother farewell, her heart heavy with the impending changes, hoping her choice will bring happiness. The princess awaits her husband, a mixture of hope and anxiety swirling within her, unsure how he will react to her decision to leave her parents. Her parents approach, their faces filled with concern and support. Her father reminds her to be true to her feelings and choices. The king urges his daughter to be careful, his voice heavy with worry for the kingdom, explaining that she is the princess of the nation. The queen, full of confidence, believes her daughter will write and tell her everything about her married life, never forgetting her for a single day. Mia also bids Hinael farewell, tears welling in her eyes. Embracing her friend, she whispers words of encouragement, placing her trust in her. Mia wishes she could stay with Hinael longer, cherishing every moment of their friendship. Sharing secrets, Hinael calls her friend, the word imbued with warm sincerity, making Mia happy and proud of their bond. The two girls embrace, a tender gesture encompassing all their friendship, support, understanding, and unconditional love. The carriage carries Hinael towards her husband's kingdom. Lush green fields and majestic forests flash by outside the window, but her heart is a whirlwind of emotions. Daya weeps, tears streaming down her face, reflecting her profound loss and helplessness. Daya felt a surge of anger towards her mistress, an anger so intense it threatened to spill over. A deep well of accumulated grievances yearned to be voiced. Daya didn't want the princess to leave alone. Their friendship had been her anchor through difficult times, and she couldn't bear to be left by herself. Hinael understood that she had betrayed Count Phil, a realization that tormented her soul, for she had broken the trust they once shared. Meanwhile, Count Phil, aware that the princess and prince had not yet consummated their marriage, decided to interfere in their relationship, secretly plotting something sinister. Evan told Hinael that Viant hadn't abandoned her. He was simply facing difficulties, but his feelings for her remained strong. Grateful for Evan's concern and sensing his sincerity, the princess shared her experiences and hopes for the future. The maid, realizing her worries were unnecessary, finally calmed down and could now focus on assisting the princess. Hinael asked Daya if she was upset by Viant's sudden departure, considering he hadn't even informed her beforehand. Upon their arrival, Russ's servants greeted them with respect and courtesy, inviting them into Russ's residence. With a flutter of excitement, the princess asked the servant if the prince was home, her voice trembling slightly with anticipation. Viscount Dwayne hesitated to answer immediately, understanding that every word could alter the atmosphere of the meeting. He was unsure how to address Hane. Evan intervened, explaining that they were tired and requesting to be shown inside, adding that the long journey had left them exhausted and in need of rest. Evan told Hane that her husband had a strained relationship with his family, which affected his attitude and emotions towards others. He explained that the prince's abrupt departure was due to urgent matters, and that he had also been poisoned. Evan said they must take Hane to the prince's residence quickly, as important conversations in their married life awaited her there. The princess pondered her husband, realizing there were misunderstandings between them that needed to be addressed and lost intimacy to be regained. She realized the prince had been poisoned but was putting on a brave face, hiding his vulnerability behind a mask of confidence. Daya asked Her Highness if she was coming for dinner, and the princess decided not to tell Daya about the prince's magic and injury. The princess lied to her loyal friend, saying she had seen her husband at dinner, that he was only late due to pressing matters of state. The maid felt indignant, as the couple sleeping separately went against all traditions and expectations for this marriage. Daya wanted to wait to understand what was truly happening within the prince's heart and why he had become this way. The princess was grateful for Daya's concern. Her genuine care and support were a source of hope in this world of intrigue and unease. The princess drifted off to sleep, sinking into sweet dreams where all worries and fears faded away, leaving only the image of Prince Russ Viant in her mind. Under the cover of night, Hane was abducted by a stranger, leaving only the whisper of the wind as she was dragged into the unknown. She was taken into the forest, through the dark woods where branches reached out like arms, and the sounds of the night created an eerie atmosphere. The girl discreetly left behind a ribbon from her hair, hoping this small clue would help her find her way back. Prince Viant awoke from his sleep feeling much better, no longer plagued by pain and fever. He was ready to continue living in this world. Evan rejoiced at Viant's recovery, his friend finally regaining his vitality. A spark of hope rekindled in Evan's eyes. They could be together again. Evan said the move was complete and they could finally attend to the matters of state that awaited the prince. He also urged his master not to worry about the princess, assuring him she was safe and being looked after. Evan asked Daya, who had rushed in, what had happened, as she was both frightened and crying. Daya explained that the princess had been kidnapped, saying she couldn't find her in her room. The prince contemplated whether to organize a search party for Hane or go alone. Evan couldn't understand why the weakened prince intended to go alone, as his health was precarious, and doing so would be risking his life. Russ's aide, Evan, loudly reminded the prince that the disappearance of both of them would be noticed by everyone in the castle. Prince Russ told Evan to lie and say he and the princess were on their honeymoon. Evan doubted the lie would be believed, worried about the repercussions if the truth came out. Russ speculated on who might have kidnapped Hane, hoping to unravel the mystery of the girl's disappearance. Russ believed it could be Count Zeta, who held a grudge against him, or perhaps the third prince, a newly emerged figure who had vowed to kill Viant Russ. As time went on, the princess's situation became increasingly dangerous. Russ realized that if he didn't act soon, she would die. After his mother's death, his stepmother brought her own son to Viant's home, and from that moment on, the boy's fate changed completely. Because of this, Viant's half-brother became the heir to the throne, a position that not only granted him power, but also control over Viant's life. Viant's half-brother wanted to take everything from him, turning him into a subordinate and a rival for the throne. Only war saved Viant, for he was a burden to his family, and amidst the chaos, he found the opportunity to demonstrate his abilities. In the past, Viant's country had experienced many disputes over the succession to the throne, and Viant defended his honor, yearning to break free from oppression and gain freedom. Hane wondered where she was. Her surroundings were unfamiliar, and the memories of the previous night were hazy. She met Count Phil in the castle's great hall, his face gleaming under the enormous crystal chandelier. Count Phil was pleased that the princess had not yet been defiled by Viant, for he knew that if Viant touched her, she would never be the same. Phil wanted to rescue the princess, who was not of royal blood, because she was the only key to the power he craved. She screamed and broke free from him, for she saw not salvation in his eyes, but cold calculation. The count ordered his servants to seize the girl and bring her to the throne room, where he had prepared for his scheme. The girl fled into the icy snow, every corner fraught with danger, every sound echoing in her heart. She didn't want to repeat her mistakes, to become a plaything in the hands of this insidious count. But she fell in the snow, almost suffocating from the cold and exhaustion, desperately crying for help, but no one answered. Hinael refused to follow the servant to see Phil, because she felt that the man was not just a servant, but the count's accomplice, and what awaited her was not redemption. The count called to her in a voice full of flattering gentleness, but she saw only cold calculation in his eyes. The count told the servants to stop holding Hinael, and despite her hands being blue with cold, she couldn't help but shed tears. He pretended to care for her, promising her a warm fireplace, a soft pillow, and a delicious dinner. The kidnapper asked how much he would be paid, his greed and coldness undisguised, filling the girl with disgust. The villain noticed the girl's wound. He turned his gaze to the kidnapper and questioned how she had gotten it. The kidnapper argued that he hadn't done it, but the villain didn't believe him. But the princess suddenly killed him with a dagger hidden in her clothes, her eyes flashing not with fear, but with the fury of revenge. Phil said he valued not his possessions, but her existence. Her disappearance meant the loss of his power. The scene shifted to Count Zeta's manor. In a cold hall where the high windows reflected the winter sunlight, the count personally washed Hinael's feet, but his touch was icy, and she could feel that he didn't want to save her, but to humiliate her. He asked the princess if she was afraid, but she saw in his eyes not concern, but the pleasure he took in her fear. Hinael asked where she was, looking warily at the dark corridor outside the door that seemed to lead to the unknown. The villain was unwilling to hand over Viant's princess, because he knew it meant losing power. He was willing to do whatever it took to keep her by his side. The princess was furious, her eyes filled not only with anger, but also with a frantic desire for revenge. The count wanted to spend the wedding night with Hinael, even though her wounds had not yet healed and her body trembled with fear. Phil prepared to share a bed with Hinael, but she felt no love, only his desire to possess her body, which disgusted her. Perhaps the princess's kidnapping was ordered by the Empire, and Russ had always been at odds with the Empire, because the Empire had long coveted the power of this land. The villain noticed that the princess's thoughts were not on him. There was no flame of jealousy in his eyes, but cold fury. Phil pushed Hinael onto the bed. She felt his icy hands on her, and fear enveloped her heart. Phil decided to share a bed with the princess before Viant, but she felt he only wanted to possess her body. Would Hinael repeat her mistakes, or would she find the strength amidst fear and horror to become a warrior, not a victim? A hawk soared high above the forest, its wings parting the clouds, its sharp eyes reflecting the setting sun, painting the sky azure. The bird flew back to its master with a small leather pouch in its beak, and its master had been watching its flight from the open window. The prince had sent his hawk to search for the girl, knowing that only the bird could penetrate the deepest canyons. He soared into the sky, searching for her. As he took flight, his wings cast a shadow across the prince's face, a silent promise to return with good news. The prince called upon magic, not the dark arts, but the power of nature, beseeching it to help him find his beloved and keep her safe. He found his wife's footprints on the ground, still damp with dew, and a spark of hope ignited within him, tinting his grief with anticipation. Meanwhile, Hinael stated her dislike for Count Phil, her words cold and distant, laced with more than just aversion. She attributed the strangeness of their situation to her father. Though she tried to remain polite to Count Phil, her heart seethed with disgust. She yearned only to return home. Hinael wanted to change into more comfortable clothes, to feel a semblance of freedom, to not have to consider Count Phil's gaze. Count Phil had dismissed the servants, wanting to personally prepare her bath, but in his eyes she saw not care, but possessiveness. While he was in the bathroom, Hine decided to escape. She saw this as her only chance for freedom, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. She began her preparations, her movements no longer hesitant, but filled with determination and the strength of her resolve. But Count Phil returned suddenly, and Hine froze, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. He tried to stop her, and in his eyes, she saw not love, but a desire to control her. She knew she had to escape. Hine swiftly and nimbly climbed down from the balcony, no longer a fragile girl, but a wildcat. Her escape was thwarted when Count Phil grabbed her wrist. In his eyes, she saw not disappointment, but a consuming rage. Count Phil demanded to know what she was doing, his voice not curious, but menacing. A cold sweat trickled down her spine. He was furious at her attempted deception, his anger fueled by the lack of remorse he saw in her eyes. Count Phil reminded her that a servant's daughter should be grateful for his love, his words dripping with false sincerity. He shoved Hine to the ground, his hands cold and hard, devoid of any tenderness. Only rage remained. He wanted Hine to understand her place. In his eyes, she saw not a man, but a beast ready to tear its prey apart. Count Phil threatened the princess, his voice filled with not only anger, but also desperation, aware that he was losing control. Hine realized that if she tried to escape again, Count Phil would show no mercy. He would stop at nothing to keep her by his side. Meanwhile, the prince discovered the kidnapper's body, his eyes blazing with fury. He felt compelled to punish him. Magic led him to Count Phil's manor. He could no longer bear the uncertainty. He had to see her with his own eyes. Viant was certain the princess was there, this conviction fueling his resolve. He knew he had to save her. Viant, perhaps affected by the disturbed magical currents, felt a whisper of fear deep within him. Count Phil warned the princess that if she ran again, she would never walk again. In his eyes, she saw not despair, but a chilling threat. Hine worried that Viant wouldn't accept her. He didn't know the truth, that she wasn't free, but a prisoner in this gilded cage. Hearing someone returning, she resolved to subdue her enemy first, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. But it wasn't an enemy who returned, it was Viant. In his eyes, she saw not joy but fear. He had seen her captor and knew she wasn't free. The girl was shocked to see Viant, her eyes sparking with joy. She knew he hadn't abandoned her. She was overjoyed to see him, her eyes shining with happiness. She knew he hadn't forgotten her, that he had come to rescue her. She apologized for her emotional outburst, a hint of panic in her voice, worried she had done something wrong. Viant wanted to help her dress, and in his eyes, she saw not only care, but respect. He didn't want her to feel embarrassed. They decided to leave while they had the chance, hope flickering in their eyes. They knew this was their last opportunity. Viant held the princess in his arms. In his eyes, she saw not only care but love. He didn't want her to feel distressed, but Count Phil ruined everything. In his eyes, she saw not only rage but despair. He knew he was losing her, and he would do anything to keep her. Viant said he'd long suspected Count Phil had mental problems. His voice was filled with certainty, but he hadn't expected Count Phil to go this far. Russ wouldn't forgive Count Phil for what he'd done to Hine. Fury burned in his eyes. He knew Count Phil had crossed a line. He had gone too far. The villain called for the guards, his voice laced with anger and panic. He knew he was losing control, his plan crumbling. Russ told the princess to stay there. In his eyes, she saw not only care but love. He knew she was in danger. The rivals stood facing each other, eyes blazing with fury, each recognizing the other as their enemy. Count Phil offered no answer to the prince's questions, his gaze cold and sharp, aware of the prince's attempts to deceive him. A fight erupted, the air thick with inevitability. Both sides understanding this was only the beginning. The villain, injured, his eyes filled with pain and rage, knew he had lost this battle, but the war was far from over. He was ready for revenge. Russ wanted to know who ordered Hine's kidnapping, his eyes filled with anger and sorrow. This was more than just a kidnapping. Russ asked Phil if he was waiting for his guards, his tone a mixture of interest and threat. He declared that he had killed all the guards, his eyes filled with pride. He was ready to bear the consequences. The interrogation continued, the air thick with tension. Russ couldn't find peace. He knew Phil was still hiding something. Viant listened to Phil's answers, a mixture of interest and fury in his eyes. He knew Phil's mind was broken. He would never forgive Phil for touching his wife, his eyes burning with rage. He knew Phil had crossed the line. Viant was ready to kill Phil, his eyes filled with anger and despair. He knew Phil would always be a threat to his wife. The princess found them, her eyes filled with fear and tenderness. She understood Viant didn't want to hurt Phil. The princess tried to stop Viant, her voice a mixture of plea and threat. She knew Viant couldn't bring himself to harm her. The enemy was defeated, the air thick with victory, but tinged with sorrow. The cost of victory was high. Viant noticed her, surprise and fear in his eyes. He knew she might try to stop him. He removed Phil's clothes and offered them to the princess, his eyes filled with pain and hope. The girl put on the clothes, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes were filled with resolve. This moment was more than just a return to her former life. Russ wanted to keep Count Phil alive. He realized that beneath that cold exterior, there was more than just secrets hidden. They left the manor, looking back at the imposing walls, filled with secrets and memories. Vi believed that Count Phil didn't deserve such an easy death and decided his punishment should be more agonizing. Vine understood that there were other villains behind Count Phil. To stop their schemes, he had to be more careful. The prince said the princess was stronger than she appeared. Beneath her soft exterior lay determination and intelligence. The prince's perception of Hane had changed. He realized that beneath her doll-like appearance, there was deep loyalty and courage. They were found by the loyal Evan. Despite the dangers and obstacles, he had never abandoned his friends and was now ready to help them. The prince instructed him to investigate the manor and find out who was pulling the strings. Vine asked Evan if he had prepared a horse for Hane. He knew she needed a reliable companion. He embraced her, carefully offering warmth and support, whispering words of comfort. Evan would carry out his orders, finding suitable clothes for the girl, each piece carefully chosen to ensure a proper fit. The prince led Hane to the horse, taking care not to frighten her, softly encouraging her. Vine asked if she could ride, carefully observing her reaction, gauging her confidence. Since she couldn't ride, the young man had to take matters into his own hands, carefully helping her onto the horse, showing her how to sit properly. He felt shy, his heart racing, when she lightly touched his back. When they returned, Hane would learn to ride. She looked forward to that moment, yearning for freedom. The prince asked Hane if she would be his apprentice, his voice filled with genuine curiosity, his eyes full of hope. They returned to the princess's homeland. As they neared familiar territory, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The protagonists were on their way home, enjoying the fresh air and beautiful scenery, their hearts filled with hope for a bright future. Hane hesitated to wake the prince, as he slept soundly, and she didn't want to disturb his peace. The journey was nearing its end, but the prince's sleep was restless, a shadow of worry crossing his face, as if something troubled him in his dreams. He scolded Hane for being careless, reminding her that she must be cautious in this dangerous world. Hane sensed the prince's pain, felt his anxiety, and resolved to do everything she could to dispel his worries. As Hane gazed at the prince, she didn't understand her own unease. In his eyes, she saw not only anxiety, but also a certain tenderness. An awkward silence fell between them, growing heavier with each passing moment, the tension in the air thickening. Hane, her curiosity piqued, asked Vine how he had found her. She was certain she had hidden herself well. The prince explained that he had spotted a ribbon caught on a branch, recognizing it as a signal she'd left. Hane's heart swelled with warmth and hope that her husband had found her. He offered no further explanation, and the silence between them stretched, becoming an almost unbearable barrier. Exhaustion overwhelmed Viant. His body felt heavy and unresponsive, his mind clouded with a mixture of helplessness and anxiety. A high fever raged through him, his thoughts drifting through fragmented memories. The carriage came to a halt, the sound of the wheels echoing in the stillness. The door opened, and servants carefully carried Viant inside, the air thick with a blend of anxiety and the scent of medicine. Helping hands removed Viant's damp clothes with gentle care. The servants departed, leaving only the princess and her husband. The only sound in the room was the steady rhythm of Viant's breathing. The girl frantically searched her memory for remedies and potions to break the prince's fever. The boy, his voice trembling with a mixture of confusion and pain, told her to leave. His eyes held a desperate plea to shield her from the darkness. Deep down, he didn't even want to hear her speak. Anger and disappointment raged within him like a storm, and he preferred the solace of silence. Hine wanted to help him change his clothes, but her hands trembled with a mixture of concern and an understanding that this gesture went beyond mere physical care. The young man slowly opened his eyes, his gaze landing on the girl beside him, her face filled with hope. He took her hand, drawing strength from her warmth. In that moment, he found the will to fight for his future. Viant pulled her down onto the bed, his heart pounding, his eyes blazing with determination. The bond between them intensified. He told her he would never let her go, his voice filled with a strength and conviction that banished her fears. Hine listened intently, her eyes filled with anticipation, understanding that his every word was a promise. His voice thick with emotion. The young man asked her to leave, knowing the decision might protect her from harm. Viant wanted her gone, understanding that in this world filled with threats, her safety was more important than his own feelings. He threatened her, anger flashing in his eyes, but inside, turmoil raged, knowing his words were a mask. Russ prepared to leave her, even though every moment spent with her filled his heart with warmth. The princess stopped him, her voice trembling with emotion, her eyes resolute. She couldn't let him go. Contentment filled her. She had found her place in the world, each moment imbued with meaning. Hine reminded him that she was his wife, her voice filled not only with tenderness, but with the unwavering belief that their love could overcome any obstacle. Hine prepared to fulfill her duties as a wife, understanding that it was more than an obligation, but an opportunity to strengthen their bond. Nothing could deter her. She was filled with resolve and the confidence to protect the one she loved. Her tongue explored his mouth, igniting a wave of tenderness and passion, synchronizing their heartbeats. Viant had feared his magic since childhood, understanding its uncontrollable power to both create and destroy. Russ wanted to push his wife away, but his heart was a battlefield of conflicting emotions and the fear of losing her love. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage to confess the worries that had plagued him. Viant kissed Hine, drawing strength and a long-forgotten sense of hope from the warmth of her lips. Lost in thought, Russ tried to understand the unfamiliar emotions swirling within him, attempting to decipher the torrent of feelings. He couldn't comprehend the source of the lightness and joy he felt. Hine suggested they bathe together, a playful lilt in her voice that made Russ feel a flicker of nervousness. Russ didn't want to avoid Hine. With her, he felt alive and free, his heart filled with warmth. The bath was ready, steam rising into the air, creating an intimate atmosphere. The scent of essential oils filled the room. Hine requested a screen from a maid to afford herself and Viant some privacy, allowing them to comfortably enjoy the atmosphere without being observed. But Viant gently stopped her, saying he preferred they enjoy the moment without any barriers. He began to undress slowly and confidently, as if each movement not only revealed his body, but also expressed his sincere feelings. Hine felt flustered in this delicate situation, her heart racing with excitement and shyness, her thoughts a jumble. Someone suggested that Hine bathe the prince. Though slightly apprehensive, she was filled with a deep curiosity. The prince reminded her that she had previously wanted to do it herself. His words brought a small smile to Hine's lips as they were now so close. Clothes fell to the floor, and anticipation hung in the air as Hine and the prince finally stood face to face. Someone suggested they bathe together. Hine's heart leaped with surprise, the simple yet intimate request filling her with excitement. Viant asked why she was so shy. Hine, blushing slightly, replied that this closeness and openness frightened her. Hine struggled to overcome her shyness, her heart pounding, her thoughts racing. This moment might change everything. Taking a deep breath, she looked steadfastly into Viant's eyes, understanding that this step required courage. She began to undress as well, feeling her shyness dissipate, replaced by excitement and anticipation. Viant's chest was filled with a mixture of excitement and tenderness, understanding the significance of this moment. It was a significant moment for both of them. He asked her to come out again, his tone firm, but his eyes held hope that this could be the start of something special. He told her she had done nothing wrong, that she shouldn't blame herself, and that everything that had happened had only deepened his feelings. Hine felt a sense of avoidance, a growing unease that made her question her own actions. Viant held his breath, hoping this moment would be a beautiful and unforgettable beginning. The princess undressed, feeling the breeze against her skin, ready to let go of all her fears. She no longer cared what Viant would do to her, for she had decided to follow her desires, never looking back. Viant bathed and touched her as he pleased, for she trusted him, knowing he would never hurt her. Passion gradually intensified, every glance, every touch becoming more intimate. The flames of love ignited between them. Hinael was ready to be a wife, feeling she had found the person she wanted to spend her life with, dreaming of their future together. The heroine, overcoming her hesitation, finally decided to step towards her dreams. Nothing could stop them, for they were filled with determination and confidence, ready to overcome any obstacle in their path. Hinael lost herself in the passionate kiss. A long-forgotten feeling ignited within her, filled with tenderness. This was just the prelude, awakening long-dormant emotions within her, filling her heart once more with warmth and affection. The prince was afraid of hurting her. The thought that one wrong move could shatter their fragile connection broke his heart. Viant softly invited Hinael to bed, his voice gentle and alluring, promising comfort and intimacy, drawing them closer. The kiss continued, magic filling the air as their lips met in a tender dance, time seeming to stand still. Hinael pulled back slightly, looking up into Viant's eyes, which reflected his tenderness. The princess blushed, her downcast gaze concealing the excitement she tried to hide. Despite her inner doubts and fears, she was willing to endure it all, just as she had with Count Phil, because sometimes love demanded sacrifice. But Viant was not Count Phil. With him, her heart raced and her soul filled with hope. Hinael and Viant decided to continue forward, regardless of doubts and obstacles, because the desire for closeness burned within them. Viant's touch was different from Count Phil's. His movements were filled with gentleness and warmth, as if every detail conveyed care and tenderness. Nothing could stop the passion between them, for the flame grew stronger with each passing moment, infusing their lives with energy and desire. With Viant, Hinael's feelings were entirely different, filled with lightness and joy, each encounter revealing a new world of emotions. Viant wanted her gaze to belong only to him, for her to see only his reflection in every glance. In the morning, Hinael was awakened by the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains and Viant's gentle whisper. She gently woke her. Breakfast, already meticulously arranged on a beautiful tray, filled the air with the aroma of fresh coffee and warm meat. After their passionate night, Viant tenderly handed her a glass of water, his voice soft and concerned, as if hoping she would once again feel the beauty of life. Russ was incredibly tender towards her, as if enveloping her in his warmth. His every glance was filled with care, as if he knew exactly what she needed most at that moment. The princess asked him not to worry about the scars left by Count Phil, assuring him they were merely temporary marks of the hardships she had endured. The passion between them reignited, like sparks leaping in the air, bringing an irresistible yearning. Russ asked her to allow him to follow his heart's desire, his voice low and confident, and she was ready to share it all with him. From love to hate is but a single step, and sometimes that step is the hardest to take, for in this moment, the heart is ruled by chaos. Russ recalled every detail of the previous night, each moment imbued with magic. The newlyweds slept in each other's arms, wrapped in a warm blanket, their breaths intertwining into a quiet melody, the world around them dreamlike. They both reveled in the beauty of the previous night, every glance and touch so special, wanting only to cherish this time that would forever remain in their memories. Hinael enjoyed a simple breakfast, savoring the aroma of fresh coffee and crispy meat. The prince offered her another piece, carefully placing the succulent morsel on her plate, all thoughtfully prepared. He had also made fresh coffee for her, the warm aroma filling the room, making her feel relaxed. They discussed whether the food at court would be more delicious, chatting about various dishes, sharing their preferences. Russ said he found it difficult to eat well, especially with so many tempting yet unhealthy foods available. In the Crown Prince's homeland, people enjoyed smoked meat for its unique, rich flavor, adding a special touch to traditional dishes. The princess ate heartily, enjoying each exquisite dish on the royal table. She realized that mornings as a married couple were meant for quiet conversations over a cup of fragrant tea, accompanied by warm smiles. The girl pondered the prince's change in attitude, trying to understand if there was a reason for his coldness. The king's daughter declared she was full, though her thoughts had already drifted elsewhere. She longed for freedom. The crown princess, with an urgent tone, inquired when they would depart, eager to leave the castle walls behind. Russ longed to relive the night they first met, those moments that filled his heart with warmth. Russ was prepared to teach the girl more, confident that each new experience would bring them closer to understanding each other. The girl yielded to him, but inwardly, she wondered if he was truly captivated by her. The carriage headed towards the castle, the shadows of trees and starlight intertwining outside the window, hinting at the mysterious magic that awaited them. Hine didn't want to talk to her husband, her heart filled with grievance and confusion, preferring to immerse herself in her own thoughts. The princess had not yet recovered from the previous night's tempest, her thoughts swirling in a vortex of emotions, her body still immersed in gentle relaxation. The coachman was asked to slow down, as the passengers found the sharp turns and high speed uncomfortable. The girl didn't understand why her husband wasn't in a hurry to go home. She had been looking forward to spending a pleasant evening together. Russ wished to be alone with her again, to talk about the worries that had been weighing on his mind, to share his feelings. The prince gently embraced the girl, solicitously inquiring about her well-being, hoping she felt loved. Russ urged the girl to rest, assuring her it would help her regain her strength and forget her troubles, and that he would stay by her side. At this moment, the prince appeared endearing in her eyes. She felt his care and concern bring her happiness, her heart filled with warmth. The carriage stopped. The sound of snapping branches echoed through the night. The door opened, inviting her into a world filled with mystery. The couple were greeted by loyal servants, ready to offer their assistance and support at this important moment. The servants were deeply concerned for the royal couple, as rumors of the approaching storm quickened their pulses. Evan wanted to say something to his master, but his heart pounding with excitement, he didn't know how to begin. Evan spoke with the prince, searching for the right words to convey crucial information that could impact his destiny. His worries were confirmed. The mastermind behind everything was Russ's half-brother, Kilo, whose dark ambitions and thirst for power threatened the prince. Evan insisted on taking action, his tone resolute, as inaction could lead to disaster. Vine understood he couldn't let Count Phil testify, as Phil's secret connection to Kilo could endanger many. Vine worried the situation would escalate, as any word or action could lead to unforeseen consequences. Evan appealed to his common sense, hoping reason would overcome his fear and suspicion. Russ believed the nobles wanted him dead, as he had become a threat to their power and influence, and they were now willing to resort to any means. Evan thought the princess bride was terrified, as her life now depended on the capricious nature of court intrigue. Viant worried about Hine, fearing her vulnerability and helplessness would make her a target for those who wished to exploit her. Viant was reluctant to discuss that night with the servants, the memory deeply unsettling. Viant admired Hane's courage. Despite the difficulties and dangers she faced, she fearlessly held onto her beliefs. The astute servant noticed Viant's every subtle movement, perceiving everything. And Hane, Viant felt embarrassed, his cheeks flushing, realizing his feelings for Hane might have been noticed. He ordered an immediate departure, aware that time was running out. Every minute was crucial. The carriage jolted towards the prince's homeland, the air thick with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Hane arrived in the Triekas Empire, filled with excitement and determination, ready to face the new challenges of the prince's homeland. Here, it was always snowy, the flakes softly blanketing the land, creating an atmosphere of magic and silence. The princess felt unwell. Her maid closed the window, protecting her from the cold wind, lest her condition worsen. The prince couldn't forget the previous night under the starry sky, where he had opened his heart, filled with complex emotions. Russ watched the princess, admiring her grace and the unseen strength that emanated from every smile. He wanted to understand these nascent feelings, why every moment spent with her made his soul tremble. Because of his magic, Russ had never been approached through Dongdi. This power was both awe-inspiring and frightening, like a dark shadow. Russ was surprised that his magic hadn't affected his wedding night. Instead of the usual loneliness and fear, there was warmth and intimacy. Viant had proposed harsh marriage conditions, trying to push the princess away, hoping her pride and independence wouldn't allow her to accept such stringent demands. But he underestimated her strength and resolve, quickly realizing she was willing to sacrifice everything. Because of his magic, he was afraid to be with the princess, worried his gift would harm her, even destroy their relationship. Russ was even prepared to kill the princess himself if he lost control, a thought that tormented his soul. Viant reminded himself that the conditions of marriage were not just the union of two hearts, but a responsibility. The imperial capital, Tuban, was situated on the banks of a magnificent river, its grand buildings intricately carved. Hane was captivated by the beauty of the castle, its towering turrets and elegant arches resembling a fairy tale. The capital before her was brightly lit and full of life, with skyscrapers reaching towards the clouds. They also passed Mount Nur, where Hane had lost her child, the echoes of grief and loss resonating within her. Hane wondered if she was pregnant, her heart filled with anxiety and hope, as this could be a new chapter in her life. She recalled the nights spent with Viant, their laughter and tender words creating a magical atmosphere. Someone told Hane the carriage had arrived, a flicker of hope igniting within her, as it signified the arrival of new changes. She asked what had happened, her voice trembling with excitement and curiosity, striving to understand the significance of the event. Russ wanted to be alone with her to face this important moment, to share the joy of a new beginning. Maya was asked to leave, pausing for a moment, slightly confused. Viant explained his lie about the honeymoon, confessing his fear that what had happened would ruin their relationship. Now Hane had to cooperate with him, but she was conflicted, wanting to support him while struggling to forget the deception. The prince said they had to continue pretending to be in love, maintaining the facade of an ideal relationship. Hane agreed, as long as everyone believed they were lovers, but she began to wonder if it was all just a game. Russ warned her not to be fooled by appearances, reminding her that many dangers could lurk beneath the mask of romance. Someone advised Hane not to trust the prince's affections too readily, as manipulation might hide behind his charm and beautiful words. Hane believed the prince's feelings were merely a facade, fabricated to achieve his own ends. Russ noticed the sadness on her face and gently asked what was troubling her. He had her cover herself to avoid unwanted stares and attention. Hane, her curiosity piqued, pointed to the strange object in Russ's hand and asked what it was. She thought it might be some sort of tradition of this country, something that would help her better understand the local customs. But the prince urged her to cover the wound on her chest, worried that its exposure would raise questions. She agreed, understanding the importance of keeping their secret and protecting her feelings, trusting the prince in this moment. Russ offered her a gift, a delicate necklace set with small stones that shimmered in the light. Curious about the contents of the box, she carefully lifted the lid, hoping for a pleasant surprise. Holding her breath, she opened it to reveal a necklace resting on a bed of soft velvet. She was about to receive a surprise that would make her heart race. It was more than just a gift. It was a symbol of care and support. The beautiful necklace, adorned with bright gems, sparkled in the light, reflecting all her hopes and dreams. The necklace would act like a magical amulet, concealing the scar on her chest, hiding the traces of pain. The prince asked her to try it on, his voice gentle yet confident, this moment marking the beginning of something significant between them. It was Evan who had encouraged the prince to buy the necklace, assuring him that the gift would become a symbol of their special bond. As the princess put on the necklace, it shimmered around her neck, as if coming alive, reflecting the light and enhancing her beauty. The necklace suited her perfectly, encircling her neck and giving her an air of unparalleled elegance, as if it were made specifically for her. The young man was captivated by her, his heart skipping a beat with every movement she made, his gaze unable to stray from her grace and beauty. Hane, worried that her wound might be seen, tried to conceal it with her long sleeves, but the unease in her heart intensified, stemming from more than just physical pain. The prince didn't want her to return the necklace, for it was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of their connection. He urged Hane to be discreet within the court, lest their relationship attract unwanted attention. Before them stood the neighboring kingdom's palace, a majestic structure with towering spires and ornate archways. They entered the throne room, its high ceilings adorned with elaborate frescoes, soft candlelight casting warm shadows. The prince introduced the princess to the court, his voice confident and formal, curiosity evident in the gazes of those present. Russ's parents greeted them with indifference, aware that their son was embarking on a new chapter in his life. Russ, filled with hope, explained that he had hesitated to present his wife to the court, ashamed of her appearance, for to him she was more than just a princess. She was the embodiment of his most secret dreams. His stepmother saw the veiled face as a disrespect to the family, believing that honesty and openness were the foundation of any relationship. Hinael lifted her veil, allowing the sunlight to illuminate her face, a moment where fear gave way to confidence. The prince stopped her just in time, his voice gentle but firm, preventing her from taking that step. The prince looked defiantly at his stepmother, his eyes filled with determination, their words clashing. The stepmother disliked her stepson's gaze, for she saw in it not just defiance, but a confidence that threatened her authority. Hinael couldn't understand the malice in the gazes of her stepmother-in-law and husband, her innocent heart unable to grasp the reason for their displeasure. The young man, worried about her, sensed the shift in her emotions and sought a way to support her. Hinael felt uneasy, the tension in the air thickening, unsure of what was causing her such anxiety. Russ pleaded with Hinael to keep her veil on, his fears stemming from his own magic, worried about the unpredictable consequences of his power. Hinael shared his concern, sensing his fear of his own magic, adding to the weight on her shoulders. The king, laughing heartily, granted them permission to keep the veil, reassuring them that true strength lay not in magic, but in trust and understanding. He recalled Viant's bravery during the Battle of Triekas, where he disregarded all danger and displayed extraordinary courage. Viant stated that despite the fear and unease within him, he would strive to find comfort with his wife. Viant, with a touch of sarcasm, remarked that he didn't wish to see bloodshed, as it wouldn't serve the interests of certain individuals who viewed conflict merely as a means to settle old scores. The king bit his tongue, holding back a sharp retort, his mind turning to the current situation. The atmosphere grew heavy, every glance, every word carrying the weight of lead, foreshadowing an inevitable clash. The king turned to his daughter-in-law, a gentle smile gracing his lips, trying to mask the anxiety in his voice. Tension filled the air, every glance and word heavy with meaning, as if foreshadowing an unavoidable conflict. The king turned to his daughter-in-law, a gentle smile on his face, attempting to conceal the anxiety in his voice. The king, his voice trembling with emotion and eyes filled with worry for the kingdom's safety, asked Hinael to take care of his son. Russ interjected, saying the king shouldn't address Hinael as princess, as the title only represented honor, and a different form of address would be better. In Russ's opinion, Hinael should be addressed as queen, as the title symbolized not only her greatness, but also her power. Those in the room murmured amongst themselves, filled with curiosity and confusion at Russ's sudden declaration. Hinael believed Russ was trying to secure her proper recognition within the court, concerned for her freedom and independence. Russ, too, often had to defend his own position at court, facing the suspicion and prejudice of the nobles. The king told his son that his behavior was unacceptable, as it undermined the royal authority. The king and queen departed, leaving behind a tense atmosphere. Confused and bewildered, the courtiers whispered amongst themselves, exchanging opinions about the recent exchange between the king and his son. Russ clenched his fists, anger surging within him, realizing his efforts to protect Hinael's freedom were not appreciated. Russ's father disliked the prince's mother, believing her capable of anything for power, a belief that fueled his jealousy. The prince's mother feared his magic, seeing it as a curse that could destroy their entire family. And so, the prince's mother died pursuing the king's love, sacrificing her own happiness and life just to win his heart. Russ had a stepmother who, despite her constant kind smiles and concerned words, always tried to replace his birth mother. Russ secretly vowed to never pursue love again, understanding that true affection could not be obtained through force or obsession. The princess gently touched the prince's shoulder, her words filled with warmth and hope, pulling him from his thoughts. She reminded him that they should act like lovers, and with a smile, she began to prepare a romantic performance. Russ agreed with his wife's idea, realizing her wishes and desires were important to their lives, and he decided to support her. He took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin and the strength in her fingertips. Looking into her eyes, he felt the connection between them deepen. Russ said they had been delayed by paperwork, but he tried to lighten the mood, adding that it was only a temporary difficulty. Hane listened to the fabricated story about the paperwork, trying to understand why Russ couldn't tell her the truth directly. Hane agreed to be his pretend lover, understanding it would help him navigate his current predicament. Viant felt confused as he realized his feelings for Hane were growing stronger, and he began to question whether he could continue the pretense. Viant gazed at his wife, trying to read her thoughts in her eyes, his heart torn between duty and desire. This conflict grew within him. He wanted to maintain the status quo to avoid disrupting the fragile balance, but he couldn't ignore his true feelings. The castle at night created a mysterious and intimate atmosphere, every corner holding its own secrets and stories. Dea was choosing an outfit for the evening banquet, flipping through the dresses on the rack while picturing all the guests in her mind. Hane asked her to find an outfit that would complement the necklace, hoping her attire would perfectly showcase its exquisite brilliance. Dea opened the chest, her gaze lingering, her heart filled with warmth as memories of family traditions and stories flooded back. Hane gasped when she saw the contents of the chest, her eyes wide with surprise. The ball held in honor of the royal couple began. Hane stood alone, waiting for a guest to come and share this important moment with her or invite her to join the royal dance. The princess wondered if she looked too ostentatious. Dea, her maid, replied that the jewelry Prince Russ had given her suited her perfectly, and that amongst the elaborately dressed nobles, she was still stunningly beautiful. Hane worried that her dress was too conservative compared to the royal attire, and that her makeup was too heavy. She asked Dea where Prince Viant was, as he had been gone for a long time. The palace decorations were resplendent and brightly lit, creating an atmosphere of magic and celebration. Hane was very worried that Prince Russ wouldn't like her, because he hadn't appeared in the throne room for a long time. She also noticed people staring at her, and tried to ignore their curious gazes. As the focus of attention of the envious court nobles, Hane felt very nervous, self-conscious about her heavy makeup, and longed to dance gracefully and attract the prince's attention. Among the crowd watching Hane were a mysteriously handsome blonde man holding a wine glass and a blonde woman. They whispered to each other, exchanging appraising glances, their words expressing both interest and a hint of jealousy towards Hane. The blonde man walked towards the princess with his wine glass, while she looked around, hoping to find her husband among the colorfully dressed nobles. An embarrassing mishap occurred. The blonde man spilled a glass of burgundy wine onto Princess Hane's dress as she stood lost in thought, searching for her prince. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she watched the vibrant liquid seep into the delicate fabric, leaving an unsightly stain and shattering the tranquility of the moment. Now, Princess Hane's beautiful, traditional gown was marred with spots of burgundy wine, a stark contrast to the flawless image she had carefully cultivated for the celebration. The blonde woman shrieked, and a mysteriously handsome man apologized for the spilled wine, introducing himself. Standing before her was the third prince, Kilo Viant, the quintessential antagonistic older brother of the story. The prince remarked to the princess that southern women were quite bold, alluding to her somewhat revealing attire, causing her to self-consciously cover herself. Prince Kilo expressed surprise that his brother would be interested in women, and Hane shot him a displeased look, her eyes conveying her distaste for his stereotypical comment. She resolved not to allow this to continue. The courtiers of her fiancé's royal family, witnessing the scene, began to actively gossip about the princess and the wine incident. Confident and courageous, Hane decided to rise above the commotion. She addressed the courtiers, suggesting they must be confused by her disregard for northern customs, which she admitted was strange and unusual. Hane pleaded for tolerance towards her, a foreigner unfamiliar with their traditions, and apologized for her oversight, explaining that she had to leave her homeland so quickly that she hadn't had time to learn about this country. Prince Kilo, accompanied by his wife, the blonde woman, made their presence known in the hall. Understanding he had failed to offend the princess, he wished her a pleasant time at the banquet. Prince Kilo Viant departed with his wife, leaving Hane alone in the center of the throne room, but he silently vowed to keep an eye on her, viewing her as a threat. Left to herself, Hane felt a pang of sadness that her prince hadn't yet appeared, while the court ladies gossiped animatedly about her. Her heart constricted with loneliness and disappointment. She longed for someone to see the real her. The courtiers were already discussing Hane, wondering if all southern women dressed like that, and commenting on her makeup, which some found endearing. Hane felt like a local spectacle, fearing that draping the wine-stained shawl over her dress would only make her appear more ridiculous in front of the royal family and Russ Vine's parents. Her husband stood aloof in the center of the throne room. She pondered how to alter her attire to blend in with the courtiers, even considering asking her loyal Dea to fetch her another shawl for concealment. Russ Viant, the hero of the Kingdom War and Hane's husband, pushed through the guests and entered the throne room, walking resolutely towards his wife, as always, somber, aloof, and shrouded in mystery and secrets. The prince noticed her in the crowd and made his way directly towards her. Her red yet elegant dress and unique aura made her stand out amidst the opulent attire and shimmering lights. The prince, worried he was late, was taken aback to see her there, dressed in such a beautiful gown, which further accentuated her grace and intelligence. Hane turned to him, overjoyed by his arrival. Their eyes met, and she felt all her doubts and fears dissipate, replaced by an intense desire to spend this magical evening with him. He had always recognized her extraordinary beauty, but amidst the flickering lights and swirling music, she seemed transformed, an embodiment of dreams and mystery, and he couldn't help but wonder why she had left such a profound mark on his heart. The princess asked the prince to lend her his fur muff, as she had grown cold while waiting for him in the throne room. Russ Viant removed the muff from his shoulder and draped it over his wife. They gazed at each other, and time seemed to stand still. The prince, after a long moment of contemplation, looked directly into her eyes with a somber expression and said they needed to talk privately, as if about to confide a long-held, important secret. Russ Viant seemed puzzled by her look, but Hane told him she was glad he had arrived and lent her his cloak. Queen Viant, his stepmother, approached them, fanning herself and sarcastically remarking that Hane's new dress had caused quite a stir among the nobles, everyone talking about it, and even Kilo couldn't dissuade her. The prince asked his mother to address Hane as queen, not princess. His mother responded with a laugh, stating that the official ceremony hadn't yet taken place. Prince Russ angrily demanded that his mother show more respect to his wife, as she would soon be a member of their family. His voice, firm and sharp, heightened the tension in the air. Queen Viant, feigning innocence, told the prince she had no interest in those who hid behind their fans, pretending they had no disagreements and simply going with the flow. As Russ Viant defended his wife, Princess Hane's honor, the atmosphere between him and his stepmother grew tense, a silence falling over the room. With a formidable expression, Russ told his stepmother that if he had gone with the flow, their family wouldn't have survived in this world. The courtiers, drawn by Russ Viant's raised voice, listened to his argument with his mother as he listed the factions supporting them: Holden, Fermac, and Sendes. Angrily, the prince shouted to the entire palace and the gossiping courtiers, declaring these three factions the financial pillars of their nation. He challenged the nobles, asking how Princess Hane's homeland, Triekas, was any different from them. Viant's father, drawn by the commotion, arrived as the subjects questioned whether the prince had gone mad for allying with Triekas, having already ceded some land to Hane's homeland and fearing war due to territorial expansion. When the king asked why he brought this up, the prince smiled and replied that his wife's honor was being undermined due to her foreign origins. The king calmly stated that he considered Hane family and a virtuous wife to his son. He then took Queen Viant's arm and left the throne room, leaving the newlywed couple and the courtiers. The prince watched his parents leave with a somber expression, while Hane, draped in his fur cloak, bowed respectfully after them. Filled with guilt, Hane apologized to the prince for the argument he had with his parents on her behalf. But Russ knew that backing down was pointless. He understood and sympathized with the unpleasant conversation Hane had to endure with them. Hane, responding with a gentle and concerned gaze, wrapped the cloak tighter, realizing the prince's genuine worry for her. Their relationship finally reached a true marital level. Wearily, Russ asked his wife to retire for the night, as she wouldn't hear anything pleasant here. His voice was low, laced with anxiety. A shadow of doubt and exhaustion crossed her face. Suddenly, Evan, on the prince's orders, having searched for the host for a while, arrived to escort the princess back to her chambers, attempting to lighten the mood. As they were about to leave the throne room, someone approached and greeted them, as if about to reveal something important. It was Luke, the king's mysterious advisor. His face was calm and enigmatic, his eyes holding a hint of respect for Prince Russ as he bowed to the royal couple. Russ told the princess they had no time to make new acquaintances and urged her to return to her chambers, emphasizing that every minute was precious and he didn't want them to meet. The advisor slyly asked the prince if he was worried about being bitten while talking to him, to which the prince told him to shut up. Luke stated he had no intention of intruding. Viant told a chuckling Evan to take Hane back to her room as quickly as possible. Evan escorted the princess from the throne room. Hane glanced back to see Hackle bidding her farewell, and she looked at him curiously. Walking down the corridor with Evan, the princess inquired about Hackle. Evan told her he was a traitor to the nation and that Prince Russ disliked him. However, Evan also mentioned that Hackle Luke was exceptionally skilled in politics. Even Kilo acknowledged his abilities. Evan also told Hane that Russ's dislike for Hackle stemmed from his personality and asked if the cloak was comfortable. Night fell, and moonlight bathed the castle where the story unfolded, casting a silver glow upon the towering walls and winding corridors, creating an air of mystery as if filled with whispers of the past and the anticipation of magic. Dea gently brushed Hane's long, golden hair, which shimmered in the candlelight, softly whispering her dreams. Suddenly, Viant appeared in the room, his expression gloomy and dissatisfied, his dark eyes flashing with anger. The atmosphere instantly shifted, tense, causing both Dea and Hane to freeze under his fury. His heavy gaze fell upon the princess, as if piercing her soul. Unspoken words and unexpressed emotions hung in the air. Hane's heart froze with fear. The prince dismissed Dea. The maid closed the door, leaving them alone. Every sound seemed amplified, the tension between them thickening. Hane, in her nightgown, rose from her chair, waiting for her husband's demands, the tightness in her chest intensifying. Each moment of waiting filled the room with a heavy, thundercloud-like oppression. But Hane was wrong. The prince wasn't angry with her. He was simply tired and wanted to spend time with her, genuinely hoping tonight could be a peaceful oasis amidst the storm of their responsibilities. The prince gently embraced Hinael, feeling her warmth melt away all his worries and troubles. His heart filled with peace and joy, as if, in that moment, they had found each other far from a world full of expectations. Hinael hesitated, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. As she realized how close they were, a complex mix of joy and shyness welled up within her. Russ carried the girl to the bed, covering her body with passionate kisses. His hands gently glided over her skin, bringing shivers of excitement and desire. Hinael stopped the prince, her voice trembling as she asked him to wait. Her eyes held a mixture of hope and fear, as if she were searching for the right words to explain her feelings and doubts. Hinael explained that after a difficult night, she needed to bathe first and would then come to him. This would wash away the fatigue and stress, and she hoped the time would allow her to gather her thoughts and prepare herself. The prince expressed his desire to bathe together, but the princess reminded him that they hadn't bathed together. They had done something else. Russ urged her to hurry and bathe. His tone, though insistent, remained gentle, for he couldn't wait to see her refreshed and renewed. The princess ushered the prince out of the room, asking him to wait outside so she could compose herself and prepare for their upcoming meeting. She needed time to sort out her emotions. As the princess undressed, her maid, Dea, asked if the prince was dissatisfied with Hinael's attire. Hinael replied that it was she who, unfamiliar with the traditions and customs of the prince's homeland, had caused him inconvenience. Dea felt terrible, her mind preoccupied with how to dress her mistress in a way that wouldn't displease the prince and his family, nor make the princess appear foolish. Daya's gaze fell upon a small bottle that had fallen from the princess's skirt pocket. Curiosity made her heart skip a beat, for she understood that this mysterious object might hold a secret. Daya was drawn to the fragrance of the liquid within. She believed that adding it to the princess's bathwater would leave her smelling delightful and even more captivating in the prince's eyes. Daya poured the fragrant liquid into the bathwater. The sweet aroma instantly filled the air, adding a mystical and dreamy ambience to the room. It made her wonder what secrets and magic the little bottle held. Prince Rusviant changed his clothes. With each garment shed, he felt the weight of royal responsibility lift. leaving only lightness and anticipation for the upcoming encounter that might change his life. While changing, the prince was interrupted by Daya. She was both afraid of his anger and curious about what would happen if she stayed and peeked. She offered him a glass of lemon juice to refresh him. When their eyes met, she felt an unspoken connection, as if, in that moment, they both understood that life could be more than just duty. Meanwhile, Hinael bathed in the warm water, enjoying the sensation of the day's fatigue and worries washing away. Thoughts of freedom and adventure beyond the palace walls filled her mind. Russ entered the bathroom, urging Hinael to hurry. His voice was eager, tinged with impatience, for he couldn't wait to be alone with her, anticipating their child. The princess blushed at the prince's words, turning away to hide her embarrassment, yet secretly pleased by his eagerness to spend time with her. She recalled how he had defended her before her parents. Though he denied that everything he did was for the throne, his feelings for her were quietly growing. Thinking of the prince, Hinael slowly sank deeper into the water, feeling the warm waves envelop her, carrying away all her worries and doubts. Images of their future adventures together filled her mind. She sank further, angry with herself, and yet thinking of the prince, unable to understand why his words affected her so deeply, unable to focus. Hinael knew the prince was under pressure because of her. He even took responsibility for her mistakes, though she knew it wasn't fair. She should be the one accountable for her actions. This realization only intensified her inner turmoil. Her thoughts revolved around their kiss, his gentle and caring nature. The moment their lips touched, she felt his warmth enveloping her, her heart beating faster. Hinael believed that perhaps Prince Russ's desire for her was genuine. As she realized his care and consideration were awakening feelings she had long suppressed, she found it difficult to hide her growing shyness. The curtain slowly drew back. The naked princess covered herself, assuming it was Daya, and asked for a towel. But it wasn't Daya who arrived. Waiting for the princess was Russ. He was stunned at the sight of her naked body, the lemonade he carried tumbling from his grasp. Russ took the girl's hand, his firm yet gentle touch sending a rush of warmth through her, her heart quickening. For a moment, she felt a possibility of something more between them. Suddenly, Russ pressed Hinael against the wall, their lips meeting in a fiery kiss. Passion surged between them, consuming them until it felt as though the world outside had vanished, leaving only the two of them. Lost in the prince's ardent embrace, the princess abruptly broke the kiss, pulling back slightly to gaze into his eyes, as if seeking confirmation that this wasn't a dream. Their connection felt deeper than a fleeting infatuation. Fear gripped her. She cried out for him to stop. Russ froze, bewildered, unsure of what he had done wrong, his heart clenching with fear. He realized that in his desire for closeness, he had perhaps crossed a line she wasn't ready to cross. A horrifying realization washed over Russ. Seeing himself, like a ravenous beast, lunging at the princess, shame filled him. He struggled to understand where he had gone wrong. Flashes of violence from the war briefly surfaced in his mind.